Folks, welcome to OTD, also known as On the Deck, where you can get all the sports you need in 10 minutes. My name is Adam Orduna. This is my mom, Gina.
He's a journalist.
She's the enthusiast.
I am enthusiastic. I've got a little madness going on right now. A little March Madness.
Well, it is March Madness, yes. And the first round of the play-in games were last night, or the bunny brackets, as some people like to say.
They're the bunnies.
They are the bunnies.
If you want to be called a bunny, win your stuff.
Exactly. So we had LIU Brooklyn versus Radford last night. Radford ended up winning, and then we had St. Bonaventure versus UCLA last night, and St. Bonaventure, or the Bonnies, beat the Bruins last night in the first round. So that portion of those bunnies, or the play-in bracket, is done. They're set. And then we've got the second round, or not the second round, but the second half of the first round of the bunnies play-ins, however you want to call it. It's ridiculous. You got 16 seeds and 11 seeds playing each other.
I don't even want
those will
try to
be
wrap
played
my mind
tonight.
around
Exactly.
It's
It's just too much going on there.
It is.
But we do want to talk about the NCAA tournament here. Obviously, the NCAA tournament isn't the only postseason tournament for college basketball teams to play in. You have the NIT, you have the CBI, the CIT, and then those are just kind of the notables for the Division I level. And then you've got all the Division II national tournaments.
Division III, NAIA, and JUCO.
Correct, exactly.
If you're a gambling person, you can get a bracket for a whole bunch of stuff.
Correct. So. Yes, you can. And so it is March Madness. It's crazy. There's a bunch of stuff going on. There's upsets. There's Cinderella stories. There's players getting hurt. There's always something going on.
We know when you were talking about UCLA, I thought to myself, losing in the bunny bracket to
St. Bonaventure, yeah.
That's not even the worst thing that happened to UCLA. If you guys remember, there were some people stealing in China.
They're just happy to be there.
There were people stealing in China to kick off the season. Just saying.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk about the 1 and 2 seeds, because we can't break down the entire bracket. We got 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we did a full breakdown last year, but we're kind of scaling it back for this year.
Well, because we're just kicking it off. We'll come back at it.
We'll definitely have our updates. And we're excited to be on Facebook Live. We've been off a little bit.
Somebody's been working a lot.
A little crazy these last few weeks here, but we definitely want to make sure that OTD
Somebody was covering the Big 12 tournament.
Well,
left me hanging.
OTD has been huge for us, as everyone knows. A lot of fans from all over the world. People are interested in what we have to say. We've got
for some crazy reason.
I know, which is kind of funny because it really has taken off.
Well, what we want to say is we appreciate you. Thanks for hanging in there. We're trying to be more consistent, but when the star is wanted elsewhere,
can be a little difficult.
Anyway, let's get into it.
All right, so the 1 seeds for this year, we've got Villanova, we've got Virginia, Xavier, and KU. 2 teams from the Big East are overall number 1 seeds.
Which is crazy.
And then you have an ACC and then a Big 12 team.
And then number 2 seeds, you've got Cincinnati out of the South, Purdue out of the East, North Carolina representing the West, and then Duke out of the Midwest. So those are your number 1 and 2 seeds. There was a lot of controversy about seedings. Kentucky always feels like they're getting snubbed. They're in as a 5 seed. Arizona's in as a 4 seed, which I do think is a little crazy because they're amazing. But there were some conferences that had pretty good showings. So
exactly.
I'll say the first one. ACC had 9 teams.
Right. Yeah. The Big 12 had 7.
The Big 10 had 4.
Yes. Then the Big East had 6.
SEC had 8.
Right. And then who else are we missing?
Pac-12 bringing up the rear.
Had 3. So and 2 of those.
That was bad basketball this season. I'm sorry. I don't mean to offend anybody. Pac-12
well, one
fans.
of the snubbed teams was USC. So. That was one of those big things. Okay, so let's talk about. My point is the Pac-12 could have had more if USC would have made it. So let's talk about the snubs because that's a big deal right now, and a lot of the snubbing goes on with college football as well, as there is a playoff committee. And it's just about what is the actual criteria for teams making it into postseason play. No one knows. It's all over the place. And so, let's talk about some of these teams that did not make it for whatever reason.
Well, and the teams that didn't make it tend to land in the NIT.
Right.
And this is a little history, but back in the day, Marquette got an NCAA invite and said, we don't want to do it, we'll just go to the NIT. The NCAA, which runs both, by the way, got mad and said, if you don't accept our first offer, we won't invite you to the NIT. So you can turn these down, but we don't recommend it. But speaking of snubs, Notre Dame, people thought should have been in the bigger dance. They are a number 1 seed in the MIT. Baylor, out of the Big 12, people thought should have gotten in. They're also number 1 seed in the NIT. Then USC, which finished number 2 in the Pac-12. really people felt like should have been in over
Correct.
Arizona State.
Yep.
They're number 1 seed in the NIT, and then St. Mary's, who was fighting to get in, but they didn't win their conference
The West
tournament.
Coast Conference.
So they're number 1 seed.
They're in the same conference as Gonzaga.
But the number 2 seeds have a whole bunch of people that got snubbed too, or
Correct.
people thought.
Yeah, so Oklahoma State out of the Big 12, Utah out of the Pac-12. Again, another Pac-12 team that could have helped bring the numbers up. Then you had Louisville out of the ACC, who really they're just getting punished for all the stuff.
They're just getting
Coach
beat
Pitino,
down because of Rick. They were running a brothel. That's why.
Exactly. And then Marquette out of the Big East, another team that always tends to make a good run, and people like to get behind. A lot of good players have come from there. So
well, if you think about it, the 8 number 1 and 2 seed teams in the NIT were all 8 or 7 of the 8 are from major conferences.
Right.
Everybody but St. Mary's.
Yeah.
The controversy about Oklahoma State, I don't want to beat us down too much time about that. They were sub 500 in the Big 12. That's the only knock against them. But they swept KU in the regular season, who was the number 1 overall seed.
Yes.
They beat Oklahoma down in the Big 12 tournament, which you were there covering.
Yep.
And Oklahoma's in. So that's, that's kind of what the frustration is. And they beat Oklahoma in the regular season and in the tournament. Their body of work, they got in there, but they're just saying that their out of conference games weren't that great. And I feel like there's no rational reason Oklahoma State shouldn't be in the big dance. And I quite frankly would have picked them to be a Sweet 16 team.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, Baylor and Oklahoma State should most definitely be in the tournament. And you're just doing blind resumes, and you're talking about, hey, it's not about the team. You're just going off the blind resume. Oklahoma State should be in. And so you can have the same conversation for a lot of different teams. And therefore, I agree. I think if these teams meet the standard of what everyone's going off of, they should be in. And the big thing that a lot of people have question marks over are you going to take a team that's in one of the power conferences that's kind of middle of the pack or bottom of the pack but have been through a tough schedule, or do you take one of the smaller schools, the mid-major schools that all they really did was just win their conference tournament and now they're in, or something similar to that? And that's kind of been the conversation.
Well, I like taking the conference champs because I feel like that's what needs to happen with football. They need to expand from 4 to 8 and make sure all the Power 5 conference champions are in there.
Should mean something.
So I'm okay with the mid-majors or even the small schools, small conferences letting their champs get in because they get bounced right away anyway.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is when you look at a team like Arizona State, who finished 9th in the Pac-12, who was a very weak conference this year, who gets now, mind you, they're in a bunny bracket, but they're playing Syracuse to get in. They're in the dance.
Right.
And then you got an Okie State who's left out, who played in the toughest conference, not because we're Big 12 people. Any coach in the country was tough. Coach K said the Big 12 was the toughest conference this year.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make sense to me.
Right. It's frustrating. Again, the finish line gets moved. It's
Every
all
time.
over the place. You never know. Some teams get in for this reason. Some teams don't get in for this reason. You don't know what the real criteria is. Yes, and the same thing happens in college football.
And I did hear, I'll give him credit, Colin Cowherd said, look, as much as people are disappointed, the one thing you got to say about this tournament is it is the most inclusive process.
Absolutely.
You've got 68 teams from across the country being able to play in. Somebody's going to get left out, but at least they are trying to be inclusive.
Right, and I do love the idea of a smaller school having an opportunity to play. If they're considered Division I in football, there's 130 Division I football teams, and in basketball, you add another 100 plus teams. And so if everyone's considered the exact same or on the same plane or whatever the case may be, they should have an opportunity to play for a national championship.
Well, real quick, let's talk about some more teams that are out. Nebraska, Penn State, Middle Tennessee, and Mississippi State all felt a little crunchy. They're playing in the NIT.
Yes.
Again, teams that people didn't feel like should be in. Oklahoma, UCLA, who's already been bounced. And Arizona State, who I think is going to get bounced tonight by Syracuse.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, real quick, because we're kind of running out of time. Do you have any Cinderellas? I don't see a bunch of them. I have one.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of Cinderellas, to be quite honest, because there's not a lot of smaller teams. You know, there isn't a Gonzaga really.
And they're now considered a big
90s.
team.
They're a real team now. And there isn't like a Florida Gulf Coast that you can kind of get behind.
They're in the NIT.
Exactly. And they lost last night anyway.
They did.
But I really don't. But I know you kind of have some teams that you are interested in.
Well, just a couple. And I know they're from the SEC, but I think Alabama could be kind of considered a Cinderella because they've really had to fight to get their positioning. Had to fight through the SEC. But Loyola Chicago, not Loyola Marymount, Loyola out of Chicago features two of our hometown boys.
Correct.
Blue Valley Northwest graduates, state champions, Ben Richardson and Clayton Custer.
Yep.
And they won the Mo Valley, but they won it outright and they won the tournament. And I think this is a team, they beat Florida in the regular season. Their first draw is tough. They're an 11th seed going against Miami. But I think if they get past Miami, this could be a little bit of a Cinderella run.
I actually agree with you on that 100%. So yeah, that would be a fun team to kind of circle on the brackets and say, hey, they've got some players.
And real quick, I know we're running out of time, but who is your Final Four? I think I know mine.
I did my bracket last night. I'm going to have to look back over it. I know I have North Carolina, KU, Duke, I have Duke, and I think it might even be Michigan State. So I got to look back
Michigan
over
or Villanova. Well, I know I have Arizona. I think they're overlooked, and I think they got the #1 overall draft pick on that team. That man's a beast.
Yeah.
I think I've got Arizona and Purdue in the finals, and I think I also have as my final two, and I think I've got Duke, and then I don't know. We got to get our brackets out. But, those are, I think your final two teams are going to be Arizona and Purdue. That's what I think.
I've got North Carolina and KU just for the fact that North Carolina is in a little bit of a weaker division. I think they have the best chance of getting out of there. So, anyway, March Madness has started. We got a lot going on here. The tournament continues tonight with the second round or the second games of the bunny bracket. So, be watching for that.
And make sure you're looking on KQ2.com. And since you're not in the viewing area, you can stream Adam doing his sports and anchoring. You can catch him on his Twitter up there, and he's going to keep you updated from the news desk, and we'll bring you some more from On the Deck.
Absolutely. Well, we're excited to bring you our show and March Madness. See you again, folks. Thanks for watching.